What about the Audeze LCD-3 stands out? Who is it for? All these answers and more coming up in the Audeze LCD-3 review and look back. Greetings, friendo, and welcome aboard. Stuart Charles here, HomeStudioBasics.com, helping you make sound decisions leading to a beautiful audio experience that will make you fall in love with music, not gear, all over again. So, what about the Audeze LCD-3 stands out? This is another headphone that left a really profound impact on me back in 2017 and 2018. Its raw, visceral nature was one of the most startling things I had ever experienced, in this hobby or otherwise. I haven't since felt anything like it, and I've demoed over 100 headphones at the time of this video. It was the first time that I remember coming to terms with the fact that headphones themselves can have a monumental influence on your own perception of how a track sounds, and was recorded. It went beyond feeling like I was hearing the track for the first time. No, it actually made me feel uncomfortable. The LCD can and probably will change your life, but perhaps not for the reasons that you were expecting. I remember vividly the track in question, Pink Floyd's Time off the Dark Side of the Moon, a song I've probably heard 1,000 times at this point in my life. This time it was paired with Bryson's venerable BHA-1. It sounded different, but there's more to it. This was like micro detail on steroids. It honestly felt like I was catching a glimpse into David Gilmour's soul. During the rhythm section and into the solo, there's a seemingly inconsequential guitar that you can never really make out with any sort of clarity. With other headphones and speakers, it always seemed like kind of an afterthought, something used to give the composition a little more body. For me, it was never articulate and was really only somewhat heard but never felt on an emotional level. I could never understand where it was in the mix, but it was always just there. I could hear it, but it sounds sort of distant and muffled, jumbled together with the other sounds. I'll never forget how it sounded through an LCD-3 though. I could pinpoint exactly where it was, down and panned almost extreme right, which speaks to the headphone's imaging capabilities. Imaging on the LCD-3 is laser-like, another quality that makes high-end headphones really stand out. Not only do they all seem to do a fantastic job at placing sounds in exactly the right positions, but you're actually able to hear and see exactly what they're doing. It was almost as if the guitar took on a life all its own, as if it were breathing and pulsating. It sounded kind of jangly, kind of loose but incredibly rich, clear, and raw all at the same time. It drew so much attention to itself, in fact, that I was forced to block everything else out and focus on it, as if it were an ant under a microscope. It was like all of Gilmour's pain and frustrations about life, his uncertainty, his doubts, his fears, and his attitude about time itself were all concentrated into that one esoteric sounding guitar. It sounded apathetic almost, as if the guitar had a distinct personality with feelings and emotions, but these emotions were just kind of ho-hum, or business as usual, or too laid back. As if it were existing but didn't quite care as much. Its rhythm meandered, but still somehow stayed intact long enough for the solo to play out. It reminds me a lot of Syd Barrett, the founding member of Pink Floyd who, for much of his short career, meandered seemingly in and out of consciousness and seemed directionless, mostly due to the large number of psychedelics he ingested. He held it together, but only for so long. It's almost as if Gilmour used this mysterious guitar to describe Syd, a person with a lot of energy and life, but who ultimately lost his way. A vastly important founding member of the band who really never received his due recognition, at least in comparison to Waters and Gilmour. It was more of a cerebral experience than anything, meaning it appealed to my intellect and my sort of analytical nature. I appreciated being able to dissect the song as I did, but it's not a headphone you'll want to kick back and relax with, at least in my opinion. Speaking of, check out my Kick Back and Relax Homie t-shirt. I promise I didn't plan that one. No, the LCD-3 demands your complete and undivided attention. It's like a blink and you'll miss it type of thing. It forces you to be completely present with the music and in the moment, not thinking about something else or being distracted by the cares of this world, something we're all guilty of. Speaking of, don't click away. So if all of that sounds like you, the LCD-3 is most certainly still a relevant planar. Even so, another thing to keep in mind about this headphone is its speed or lack thereof. Part of the reason I was able to clearly define every aspect of time with unparalleled precision and accuracy is that it was almost moving in slow motion. This isn't quite a knock, but it's also not really a compliment either. It sort of just is. It was cool in the sense that the song took on a different personality and I could focus on it more, but at the same time, the perceived speed almost altered it in a way that seemed sort of artificial and fabricated, now that I look back in hindsight. Even so, the soundstage is quite good here. You'll get some out of your head moments for sure, but it doesn't feel overly wide or anything. At 110 ohm and 101 decibels sensitivity, an amp is highly recommended, not because it's hard to drive, but rather it comes with an extremely bulky 1/4-inch cable, which most higher end headphone amplifiers have. This headphone was made to run with an amp of some sort. I use the Bryson BHA-1 as mentioned earlier. I may not recommend these for metal based on speed, but they'll work with most genres regardless. The bass digs down incredibly deep, and for the most part, it's a neutralish response with a non-fatiguing, detailed treble. The build is incredibly rugged, but comfort will be a point of contention for many. I personally cannot wear Audeze headphones for more than an hour without having to take them off. My neck/disc issues certainly contribute to that, so your mileage may vary. They tend to sit pretty well on my head, but they feel like a bowling ball. Clamping force on the sides of your head is fine, but the headband may dig. I'll leave a link down below for Metal 571's review. Pretty much everything he says in the video aligns with my own opinions, so therefore he's right. Nah, but I really think his review was bang on. The LCD-3 was most certainly the most eye-opening experience I've ever had listening to headphones with regard to clarity and detail. You could almost reach down and touch Gilmour's guitar. That's how articulate and real it sounded. As for it being a sound purchasing decision, it's hard to say. At its asking price of around almost $2,000, I want to say yes based on its visceral nature alone, but really I probably couldn't justify that much. Even so, if I were looking for a perfect endgame type of headphone, the Utopia is it, hands down. I'll leave a link down below for that, but speaking of the Utopia, let's take a look at my favorite headphone of all time and venture a little bit further down the rabbit hole. I know it will help you out immensely on your journey. I'll see you over there.